Gearing up for the Halloween season, you're going to hear a lot of stories on different channels going on about supernatural experiences, ghosts, witches, goblins, and they make for great content, especially when it comes to scaring people, definitely during this time of year. I have two stories that are different because it doesn't involve supernatural, ghosts, or anything like that. It involves a people and what some people are capable of. This is a true story, and I still get chills when I think about it to this day. When I was 11 years old, I just started 6th grade and in middle school. Brand new school, new teachers, whole bunch new kids. My elementary school was much smaller, so the middle school was much bigger. And it was very intimidating to start that school, especially with as many kids as there was. So each grade was assigned a specific teacher for the basic subjects. And for English, our teacher, I'm not going to say names because I want to protect the family. He was an older gentleman, but he was a pretty funny teacher. He always joked around and stuff. He would have weekly vocabulary quizzes where we would have to study the words every week and the definitions, and then the quiz every week. I think it was Friday. It was matching the definitions to the words. It was pretty easy, actually. I ended up failing the first 2 or 3 tests. After I failed the third one, I remember I had to bring them home and get them signed by my dad, which was terrifying to me. He did, and I got yelled at, but then my teacher set up a parent-teacher conference with me included to go sit and have a talk with him. So we went to the school one night, and we all sat down together, and my dad sat across from him, and I was on the side in between the two of them. And I remember he folded his hands and got a big smile on his face, and he said, "Your son is failing. He has failed the first 3 quizzes, and I know some people don't test very well, but I think he just needs a little extra help. So I actually offer extra help tutoring sessions at my house on the weekends if he's interested. So what do you think?" My dad's head tilted to the side, confused at first. And he looked at me and then turned back to the teacher and said, "My son doesn't need extra help at your house on the weekends. I will work with him. He will not fail one more test for the rest of the year." I couldn't describe it at the time, but my teacher actually looked kind of upset about what my father said. And he smiled and said, "That's okay. If you change your mind, let me know. I offer it all year round." They shook hands and we left. Needless to say, in the car, I was yelled at. At home, I was grounded and yelled at as well. But for the rest of the year, I got 100 on every single test going forward. That was pretty much it for that part of the story. Got through 6th grade, got through 7th grade, and I remember when I'm passing through the halls those years, I would always see him, and he would always say hi to me. And sometimes he'd make jokes, like if I was coming from wood shop and I had something that I made, he would pretend to take it into his classroom and start laughing, and then I'd say, "Hey, give that back," and then he'd give it back, and we'd part ways. But again, that was all it was. Fast forward to the summer of 7th grade going into 8th grade. The news reports all in our town broke that a few young men stepped forward saying that this English teacher had essayed them for latter part of their 6th, 7th, and 8th grade years. He would hold extra help tutoring sessions at his house, and that's when it would happen. And I remember not really putting 2 and 2 together, thinking that this could have been me. And if it wasn't for my father, it would have been me. And then what my life would have been. He was obviously arrested, stripped of his teacher's license. I heard he worked at a paint store near my house after that for a little while, but after that, never heard about him again. My father died a few years later, and I really never formally got to thank him for actually saving my life, because he really saved my life that day when he said no. That's why I always say, sometimes people are scarier than any ghost you can ever experience. This is my second story. This is much more recent, and I still can't believe this happened. When I was in high school, I went to a Catholic school. And there was this kid that I always got along with. I didn't have many friends in high school, but I did talk to people. This one kid was actually a good friend of mine, and we actually used to stay in touch over the years. I remember freshman year, he had gotten expelled for whatever reason it was, and then managed to come back junior year and then got expelled again. It was a very bizarre circumstance. I never understood it, but that's his issue, not mine. Fast forward to my adult years, we live in the same town, and he lived above a salon in the town that we live in, and it was kind of like a one-bedroom crap hole apartment, and he worked odd jobs here and there. I remember he worked at a grocery store, then I remember he worked at a convenience store, and the last job that he had was at Panera. Most of the times I would see him would be at this little convenience store that he used to work at, and whenever I'd see him there, he was always drunk or high or just acting crazy. But we'd always have conversations, and they'd always lead to, friendly banter. Nothing too deep. A few weeks later, I was with my son in a Target store. My son was about 6 or 7 years old, and we were in this little dining room area eating Pizza Hut. I remember that. And I saw him, and he was in his Panera uniform. And I called his name, and he came over and said hello. And I introduced him to my son, and he had a guilty look on his face. I couldn't understand why, but he said, I got to go, I'm late for work. I just thought he was stressed out because he had to run back to work. So he left, put it out of my mind, and went along with my life. A week or two later, I remember I bumped into him at the Quick Check. And like usual, he was drunk, but I had never seen him like this before. He was out of control, like slobbering and slurring and just being a complete degenerate, honestly. And that actually was the first time I actually passed through my head, this guy's out of control. There's something wrong with him. And I remember we were talking, and then we started talking about high school again. And he remembered that when I was in high school that my father passed away, and I remember he was actually very sympathetic towards me and what I was going through. And he started telling me about his home life and how his dad hates him, and his mother can't stand him, and his sister doesn't really talk to him anymore. And I just said, that's how families get sometimes, but your family loves you. They love you for who you are. And he shook his head and he goes, no, my father can't stand the sight of me. I'm an embarrassment to him and this whole family, blah, blah, blah. And I remember I felt really bad. And I told him, I said, listen, families go through things. Right now, maybe they don't like you as a person, but they'll always love you. You're their child. That's how it works. And it appeared to have had a little bit of effect on him, my words. But, we shook hands, gave a half hug, and then I was on my way. 2 days later, my Facebook starts blowing up that this kid was arrested. I was like, oh no, what did he do now? And then I read what he actually did, and I almost passed out. What he was doing was going into the bathroom at the Target, and when a little kid walked in alone, he would grab them, threaten them, or make threats towards his parents and say, if you don't come with me, I'm going to do something bad to your parents. He was touching little children inappropriately, and when they caught him, he was trying to take a child from the Target and go God knows where with him. I was in utter shock. I could not believe this was the same person that I just talked off the ledge about being a horrible person, because in actuality, he is a horrible person. And that day he was in Target, who knows what he was doing. And I'm so glad my son did not like to go to the bathroom by himself in public stores at that time, because if I had found out he had tried to do anything to my son, this would be a whole other story. And it just goes to show you really can't trust people at all. Every once in a while, I'll Google his name to see if he was actually ever convicted of it. And the last I saw was in 2020, right before the whole world shut down, that he was trying to argue that he was not competent to stand trial through his lawyer. Since then, there's been no new developments, but hope they put the guy away for a long time, because I don't ever want to see him again. Thank you guys for listening. I know this is a little different from the stories I normally post. It was a little more off the cuff, I normally like to write the stories out and read them off paper, but I have some trouble sometimes. So I tried to do this all from just speaking, and I know it's probably a choppy mess, but hey, I gave it a try. Welcome to spooky season, everybody, and I'm hoping to have some more stories coming soon, so scare you later.